Well, Heritage, as Kelsey said, we are really excited about this series, and today marks the halfway point. We have, across all of our locations, been talking about some intentional, everyday ways that a person who follows Christ can bless people, and that's a highly intentional word for us. On week one, introducing the entire series, we talked about how bless is sort of in a category of its own. This is beyond random acts of kindness or just doing people a solid, but the background, the history on the word, it has heaven involved. It's when you commit an action or you do something that actually scoots people closer to God. It actually leans on heaven in what we do. And so as people who want to help more and more people find God, more and more people follow God, we want to learn intentional practices that we can have. And so we're using this acronym BLESS as a field guide, and we started with B. The last few sermons, weekends have gotten such a great response that I'd encourage you, if today's your first Sunday, you can always go online and catch up on our YouTube channel. But B is begin with prayer. And this was such a key week to start talking to God about the people we know. Start talking to God about the places where we go. And there are many people who wrote a name on a card, many people who have a goal now, a prayer goal of praying for the people that God has put on their heart, and doing that regularly and just say, hey, God, what's your idea? How can I help? How can I bless? What can I do for these people? L was last week. We talked about listening. And I don't know about you, but I often overvalue what I say in a conversation, and I undervalue the importance of just being present in that conversation and being a receiver and being a listener. And so last week was really just devoted to watching Jesus work when it comes to listening. And I wonder if this week was a great workout week for you, just trying that out, because, and people can attest to this, that listening it's just packed with potential of what it means to serve people and minister to them. And so today we're on E, and you might be thinking E might be kind of complicated, and it's like, oh boy, here comes evangelism, or here comes, or we're not really sure. The word is eat. Eat. Sound like something you can do? Eat. We love to eat. And this is an everyday thing. I practice at least 3 times a day at being a good eater. We love it across the world. We're fully agreed on this. Food is a major cultural topic no matter where you go. There are cooking shows, there's podcasts, there's cookbooks, and of course there are eating competitions. We have hot dog eating competitions. We have crawfish eating competitions. There are onion eating contests. I've even heard that there's actually a mayonnaise eating competition. The world record holder ate 8 pounds of mayonnaise in 8 minutes. Here's a picture of a blobfish. Do you have a picture of a blobfish? That would be what I would feel like if I ate like a quart of mayonnaise, I think. I received people like reaching in the chair in front of them for barf bags. I'm sorry, we didn't think that far ahead before we said that, but let's just go back to eating. So when it comes to eating, what gets even better is that you and I eat every day, but when you share that eating space with other people, well, now you've got a meal. And a meal has a unique ability to connect people together on a relational level. It's special, and I think a big goal of today is just to be able to identify that. So I want you to think back to a lot of the happy family memories that you have being around the table. I know I have 5 siblings, and we probably had more fun at the table than our parents wanted us to have at times. But we probably reenacted 1,000 sitcoms and movies there, and there's lots of laughs and lots of conversations. I remember I have a lot of good memories of us picking our dad's brain, those deep questions in life, like why does the moon change shapes like every day, or what's ranch dressing made out of, or just whatever comes to a child's mind. You think about how this plays out in school. That back when you were a kid, and even today, the cafeteria table is a major way how kids express who their friends are and who they want to spend time with. Think about growing up when you were invited to other people's houses. Remember what that felt like for people to feed you and to take a special interest in you and get out the nice plates, because you were there. Think about how meals are central to dating, and they become central to romance. Meals are central to work. Doesn't matter if you're dining and having conversation with foreign dignitaries or you've all decided to open your lunch boxes on the work site as a crew at the same time every day. There is something about sharing that space that brings people together in a special way. There's conversation that happens, and there's bonding that happens that may not have happened otherwise. There's just something about it. And so it probably won't surprise you that Jesus put special importance on sharing meals with people. You read through the story of Jesus, and you'll see this component of his ministry stand out time and time again. He was known for hanging out at Mary and Martha's often. He invited himself over for food at Zacchaeus' house. Even his first miracle was at a wedding feast. And Jesus, the night before he was crucified, he spent that entire evening around a table with his closest friends. A few days later, when he was resurrected from the dead, he had breakfast around a campfire with those exact same friends. Jesus leaned into the power of eat and meals in a cultural way that's probably a little lost on us today, because we're so accustomed now to, drive-throughs and, eating at our desks. And, some families, it's permissible to, walk away from the table with your plate and go back to the home office or go to your bedroom or something like that. But I'll tell you what, even more than today, in Jesus' day, to share a meal with somebody, it had a message attached to it. You matter to me, and I want to spend time with you. And it was that message, that easily sent message, that to eat with someone indicated who you valued. That message sent by Jesus drove some people crazy. And I want to give you an example why. If you want to follow along, you pull out a Bible or a Bible app, and I want you to check out an account of Jesus' life that called Matthew, or the Gospel of Matthew. So if you're doing a table of contents, look for Matthew, Gospel of Matthew. If you chase this guy's LinkedIn down, Matthew, you would find out he was a professional tax collector. And in that day in Israel, tax collectors were despised by pretty much everybody. One, it was just an unpleasant, if collecting taxes wasn't unpleasant enough, these tax collectors actually worked for the man. They worked for the opposition. They worked for the Roman Empire. And Rome didn't much care how much taxes you extracted from people as long as they got their cut. And so in Jesus' day, tax collectors were notorious for becoming very rich people off the backs of their fellow countrymen. And that's why the Jews had no problem labeling them as traitors. Pretty much everybody would avoid them. A tax collector's testimony was of no value in a Jewish court. Tax collectors were listed among beasts and unclean things, where you would need to make yourself ceremonially, pure again and go through some religious rite. And if you came in contact with them, godly people would not address tax collectors. They wouldn't touch them. They wouldn't even look at them. And so now you know that there's a place in the Bible that is written by a tax collector, and you're wondering, why would God use a person like that to put something in his bestseller? Well, we're going to see that. Look in chapter 9 of Matthew, and it shows us that. It says, one day Jesus was walking along. He's walking around with his disciples. He sees a man named Matthew sitting at his tax collector's booth, and he says, "Follow me." And it's a real big deal. This is not, hey, I want to show you something. A rabbi or teacher like Jesus would say, "Follow me," to somebody that they wanted to do business with. Somebody that they were calling and inviting to apprentice under Jesus and say, hey, why don't you go where I go? Why don't you learn to do as I do? It was a high honor to be invited to leave your family trade and follow a rabbi full time. And this is why rabbis only chose the best of the best of the best in order to sort of, minimize the possibility of a wasted investment. And so this is Jesus. He's like, tax collector. That'll do. He's like, hey, hi, I'm Jesus. I'm putting together a team to change the world. You want in? And guess what happens? The Bible says Matthew got up and followed him. Isn't that wild? Like so much that could be said there that wasn't said. Doesn't even tell us if Matthew said anything. He just gets up, walks away from his job, and he follows Jesus. Pretty mysterious, kind of exciting. So now Matthew's in the band, and they're walking around with the other disciples. The other disciples are really confused. They're trying to ignore, the looks of the locals, and then, eventually at some point, Matthew's like, man, I'm starving. Left my brown bag back at the office, and Jesus is like, I could eat. And Matthew's like, well, I got food in my house. And Jesus is like, let's do it. And Matthew's like, all right, my pagan dirtbag friends are going to want to come over as well. They always do. And Jesus says, it's a date. And that's why you read here, Matthew writes, so Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. So, in a society where most people are like, ugh, there is a tax collector, cover the children's ears and run in the opposite direction, this is Jesus. Why hang out with one tax collector when you can hang out with many tax collectors? Do you love that? And their stone cold bodyguards and their mistresses and whatever disreputable sinners, that means. We're going to have a party at Matthew's house. And Jesus is going to come along. And it's an interesting thing that there's just nobody that Jesus won't hang out with. And I love this about Jesus, that he pulls Matthew in, and the first thing that he does is says, I would love to meet your friends. Can we come hang out at your house? I don't imagine that this dinner party was awkward silences and forced politeness. I just don't get the sense from what we know about Jesus that people were sitting around, stopping themselves from cussing just a little too late, and just everybody walking, on thin ice. I also don't get the sense. I don't imagine that Jesus ran the table and forced people to comment on spiritual matters that they weren't accustomed to discussing. There's a band of pirates hanging out at Matthew's house tonight, and they're already comfortable with who they are and who they are with each other, and Jesus is joining them. Jesus met them where they are. I think this is a profound relational statement. Anybody who deals with Jesus on an honest relational level will never be the same. But that never meant that Jesus won't meet you right where you are. And this is what it's going to be like at Matthew's house. And Jesus is the light of the world. So I'm confident that he knows how to engage people in inspiring ways. I'll bet that there was intrigue and laughter and stories. And I'll tell you what, these questionable characters, whoever they were, I bet they were nothing like Jesus, but I bet Jesus had them all in the palm of his hand by coffee and dessert. That's what I think. And now, check this out. Also common in this society is that when something big was happening, there was a big, there was a shindig of sorts. That it was totally acceptable for people to come hang out, people to come look and listen over the hedge. The town would just sort of make an evening out of it, even though they weren't invited, they could still come hang around. And what Matthew records is this is where the religious leaders came from. Picture some people who worked really hard to earn the right to look down their nose at everybody. And so the religious leaders show up, and they've got a question. Verse 11 says, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, Why does your teacher eat with such scum? And I think that there's a few things going on here when they ask this question. Why does your teacher eat with such scum? Now, there's a first part of this, is that it was customary that if a bigwig came to town, somebody like Jesus, somebody with a reputation, some kind of rabbi or scholar or something like that, if somebody was crossing through, typically it was the religious elites, like the Pharisees, who would get first crack at this guy, have him over at their house or something like that. So embedded in this question is very much, hey, how come we weren't invited to come hang out, as much as it was, why are you hanging out with people like this? And then you see this word scum, and that's the New Living Translation for you. You might have a Bible open in front of you right now that instead of the word scum, you see the word sinners. And that's not a statement that these are people who didn't believe they were sinners, as much as this is like spiritual slang it's like a derogatory catch-all for anybody who wasn't like devoutly religious. What they meant was scum, undeserving outcasts, willful and disobedient lost causes. Why is your teacher hanging out with people like this? Because as we've said and we've all agreed, you share a meal with somebody, you're making a statement that I value you, you matter to me, and I want to spend time with you. And they probably have a point. If Jesus is playing according to their religious scorecard. Because if that's the fact of the matter, then yeah, this was a bold move of Jesus to be seen in public toasting glasses with Jerusalem's most wanted. And I wonder if you've ever felt that tension before, that maybe you've had some kind of association with somebody and you were a little embarrassed. You weren't sure how you felt about other people seeing you together because you were afraid of what other people would think. It's probably happened to all of us. I got a funny story of several years ago. I did a pretty good job of befriending a local politician in town. I knew his family and was always a smile and a wave and good conversation. And I wasn't going to vote for this politician just because our policies, priorities didn't line up. But that never came up. Doesn't have to. But then one day I came home and his sign was in my yard. And I think maybe he asked my wife and she was like, I don't know, sure, or whatever. She didn't know him. I did. She didn't, And so you put yourself in my shoes. I'm standing there scratching my head and I'm trying to weigh this out. On one hand, the guy's trying to do a hard thing and I would call him a friend, and all he's asking for is a few feet of green space. Can I just give the guy a few feet of green space for a few weeks? Can I just do that? And then there's another part of me that's thinks maybe that would sort of be misleading in a harmful way to maybe my neighbors, to the people I know, or whatever. And in the middle of those two ideas is you feel this tension. So I'll let you be the judge of what I should have done. I'm not going to tell you what I decided. But if you could feel that tension, then you know exactly where these religious leaders felt like they had trapped Jesus. Because to share a meal with a person is a huge relational statement. And they fully expected to be able to leverage this into sort of a canceled Jesus moment or movement. And so that could be true if Jesus is playing by their religious scorecard. They ask a question. And I got to tell you, I read the response many years ago when I was first learning how to give my life to Jesus as a teenager. And I still remember reading it and thinking, it stood out to me and it has stayed with me. The Pharisees said, why does your teacher hang out with such scum, such sinners? And Matthew records this. When Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. You see, the only scorecard that Jesus plays by is this one, is that if he meets a person who could use a touch of heaven, if he meets a person who could use an increase of hope in their life, then he is just he's ready to bless any way he can, to bless them as to scoot them a little closer into a relationship with the God who loves them. And nothing else matters to him. Jesus cared not about his status. He cared not about his popularity. He didn't care about his reputation, knowing that his character would take care of his reputation. It's always the way it works. Nothing else mattered. The time investment to whoever came in, it was never a regret to him. Jesus easily, you know what? Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Many years ago, I read that for the first time. Now I'm an adult, and I can tell you this about doctors. Every doctor I've ever met is so busy. Like literally, think of all the physicians and doctors you know. It's always, you talk to them, you have this awareness. They have a packed schedule. They keep chit-chat to the minimum. You know, they write out prescriptions like they're in the middle of a 40-yard dash. Like doctors have places to go. They have people to see. I have never sat with a doctor on their office time at an appointment and got the impression that we were just hanging out. And that the doctors I know would say, ain't nobody got time for that? Like to sit around and be with people who want to justify their symptoms or have some heady medical conversation and talk details and have a friendly little debate or maybe even go as far as to say, you know, doctor, actually, I think I'm fine and I think you're not well. Any of your doctors willing to hang out and kind of run that loop with you? No. And that's the thing about doctors. Doctors are in the game to help people who can't help themselves. This is their passion, and it requires discipline to stay on that track. So they spend their time with the sick. They spend their time with people who may not know something is wrong. But if you get them talking, they start to admit, man, something's off. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I'm open for consultation. Jesus wanted to hang out with people where there was room for saving. And that's what Jesus had come to do. Everybody was welcome to the table if there's an opportunity to bless. And if you want to hang out with Jesus, but you don't have any needs, and you're probably proud of that, no problem. He has no problem excusing himself because I got other people to hang out with. And I wonder, what do you think it would be like for you and me to have that kind of freedom and that kind of focus? I think that's what stands out to me, is that Jesus was free to stay focused on the mission. And he was focused to be free for the mission. And that's how Jesus rolled. And for you and I, look, listen, meals are still a major way today of saying, you matter to me, and I want to spend some time with you. We follow a man who said, healthy people don't need a doctor. People who think they're healthy don't need a doctor. Sick people do. So why do I think that line stuck out to teenager Justin so many years ago, the scrawnier version? Why did it stick out and stay with me? Honestly, as I've thought about it, I feel like in one line, so many people learn everything they need to know about Jesus. Anybody within earshot, the religious leaders, the disciples, the pirates, me. That was so good for me at an early age to see that Jesus' life was not about Jesus. And that's okay. And he walked with a smile on his face. It didn't feel like a gross sacrifice. He was more focused on doing everything possible to bring more people from earth into a heavenly eternal life that he knew was waiting for him, just beyond the horizon. His life wasn't about him, and so his relationships really weren't about him either. Think about it. I'm sure that Jesus enjoyed his relationships, but they clearly weren't restricted. He wasn't restricted in his relationships according to type and taste like many of us allow ourselves to do. you can bless so many more people when it's not about you. And what you're jonesing for, or what your taste is. And so Jesus was free to just bless people, and it didn't really matter to him what the paparazzi caught him doing, or where he was going, or who he was hanging out with. He always left these places with a smile on his face because he was in the business to bless, and business was good. And he was into missional eating. Like, I don't know about you, I can get behind that. And so I think that this is a great place for us to learn what it's like to be like Jesus to the people around us, to develop genuine relationships with heavenly motives. You and I are in the business of blessing. So one thing I'd like to do is just try to draw a circle around for you and me. What would it look like for us to start to angle, to prioritize this just a little bit more, for us to start to strategize? We want to bring heaven to earth for people who desperately need it, who need what we have. What would this look like? I want to draw a circle around 4 words. And if you can hit this, then you're in the bullseye, all right? The first one, when it comes to the eat aims, the first one is this, it's just hospitality. What is that? That's taking care of people, offering what you have to make them more comfortable than you. So often associated with inviting them into your home, could be your office, whatever space that you have to offer, entertaining people, cooking for people, baking for people, serving people, treating people, hospitality. Here's the next one, exchange. If you think about it, building a relationship with people always involves you and the other person having more of the other person's stuff. This is why like dating breakups are always such a mess, right? And shoe boxes, big boxes are involved and things like that. That's what a relationship is. When you and I have more of each other's ideas, more of each other's stories, more of each other's perspectives. And so one of the aims of EAT is that there's an actual exchange there, and that one person doesn't do all the talking or it's just silence, but it's like a life-on-life exchange. Here's another idea. Intimacy, so important to what we're talking about. I mean, can we just admit that you are suddenly on another level with another person in your life once you've watched each other chew? There's some intimacy involved there. It's different. You'll learn they put Tabasco sauce on everything. Like you learn different things. You have a different access to their life, and it's not a romantic intimacy necessarily. It's just about knowing a person to a deeper level, and that's true in conversation as well. And I want you to know that as you talk, I was amazed earlier this week. I was able to go out to eat with some friends, and these friends for me are for people that I've been friendly with to a high degree for many years, but I want to develop the friendship. We had the opportunity to grab lunch, and so I made sure I was there, and it was hilarious to me that the 6 of us are hanging out for the first time as the 6 of us, and most of the conversation was about other places in town to eat, and the place we were at was not that bad, but it's just like, wow, meals are just like that important. We love our food, and I'll tell you, we started out with the basics and the things that we already knew about each other, but by 90 minutes later, 2 people were grieving heavy losses in their lives, and we were asking questions like, so how are you doing with that? What's that going to be like? Most of these people are not Christians, by the way, and that's just the way the conversation went. The more time you log with people, the more access they're willing to give you in their lives. And so you ask questions and you listen, and the depth will, listen, I don't want you to swing for the fences. You want to be intimate with somebody. Don't swing for the fences with every question. The depth will come the more time you spend with them. And here's one more aim when it comes to just eating with people. It's authenticity. What do I mean by this? It means that this is a space where you are determined to be you. Okay? If you want to bless somebody, then you reject the idea that you need to perform for them so that you get another few months of friendship. that authenticity means that you bless them by being the real you. They don't need your perfect appearance. They don't need your perfect living room. They don't need your perfect pot roast. Throw that out. If you want to bless people, you give them access to the real and relaxed you. Any, if not all of those 4 ideas of hospitality, exchange, intimacy, authenticity, that's what we're talking about. And you invite people to come join you in that space. You've already begun to bless them. And there's no telling what God can do next. We care about this so much. Here's a few things I want to do. I want to incite your curiosity. Who do you think you could drink or eat with in the coming weeks as a way of blessing them? You know people that nobody in this room knows. And God's put them in your path for a reason. That's why E is part of our field guide. Who do you think God would put on your heart? I want to tell you a few things. One, I want you to realize as a church, so many people, I want to encourage you, so many people here already understand this, and I want to salute you for this. This whole idea of eating, we've got this down pat when it comes to like inviting each other into the same eating space, sharing meals together. As far as the dudes go in this room, you know that tomorrow night we've been talking about Wings and a War movie. And we still got space. It's not a trick title. We're hanging out. Why? Because we know the power of making something not accessible just to each other, but to the other guys in our lives. And just about 6 weeks ago, we did a men's breakfast, and we did it at Panera, and they didn't have space for it. We had too many guys, and so we're gonna do another men's breakfast at the end of April 30th, and we're gonna do it in a place that can hold even more people than before. I would say our heritage groups, we have 11, 12 heritage groups just on this campus. And the ones that are in person, I'll tell you what, you guys understand this. It's hard, you're hard-pressed to find a heritage group where there isn't food involved, if not a full meal where everyone comes around, has the meal, and then they talk about their lives, and we talk about God's word, and we pray for each other and all those things. But it's an amazing thing. And there's people nodding their heads, and I know who you are. I know what groups you go to, and I've been in your group, and I love how you guys cook. And like, this is one of the things. Some of the single guys in my church they're like, yeah, I've got 3 groups, and then I can count on that. I'm like, they're always happy to have you. It's just one of those things. You understand that. Did you know this about the student ministry here at this campus? We meet on Tuesdays, and the junior hires and high schoolers always eat together. Did you know that? I don't know if you knew that or not. It's one of my favorite things about our student ministry. And it's not like grab and go, snack pack kind of things. Like people make a meal and we sit down and eat. Why? Because the leaders in your youth ministry want to leverage that as an opportunity. We want to watch each other chew. We want to ask real questions. We want to be in a safe space. We can figure each other out and mind each other's business and have conversations. So you guys are already doing a fantastic job. If you've had a taste of that, now just understand we're making that an official space where you can find more and more people to come join you, whether you're good on the grill or not. It's time to just be creative. Let me ask one more time. Who could you drink or eat with as a way of blessing them? Because if you bless them, you will scoot them closer to God. So there's a challenge we want to give you. And I want you to listen really closely because I don't want you to miss it. If you have somebody in your life you've been praying for, you have somebody in your life that you know could use some hope, and they're accessible to you, we want to challenge you to open up your home, your schedule, your refrigerator, sometime this week or in the weeks to come. If you think you've got a shot, that you could have them over, or maybe have their family over, or maybe you could put just a little party without the kazoos together, and you've got some people and you want them to meet the other people, and you've been planning on doing this, you've been kicking this down the road. Now's your chance. You see, this is what Jesus would do. And so your church wants to get behind you, wants to celebrate what God's doing in your life and is trying to do in other people's life. And so this is the promise that your church wants to make to you. You ready? Is that we will reimburse you up to $50 for whatever you're willing to do in the upcoming weeks in order to just share a meal with somebody that you think needs to get scooted a little closer to Jesus. You can take them out to coffee. You can have them over to your house. You can take them out to a restaurant. Doesn't matter if you'll go in on this challenge with us. And this is happening at all of our locations. So I'm not just making this up. It's not just Deep Pockets Live, just throwing something out there. This is our church who loves to deploy you when God is moving you. And so this is all you have to do. You go to heritagechurch.cc/bless. And if you'll go there, you will see a place where you can punch in your name and you can share the story of whatever happened and you can upload the receipt. And we'll get checks out sometime by the middle of April or something like that. Understood? We want to remove the obstacle. We believe in what God is doing in you, in our church. So get out there and bless somebody in the weeks to come, all right? And then finally, I want to talk to anybody in the room who just, I feel like if I'm in your shoes, I'm just highly curious whether you're familiar with church. Maybe you're new to Jesus. Maybe you're just new to Heritage or whatever it is. And your curiosity has been aroused by people who would start talking about their kid knowing Jesus even before the kid can talk. Or you're curious about a church that would put their money where their mouth is and just kind of commission everybody to, and I hope you take us up on this. I hope you make us think twice before we do this again. Like, I hope you really go for this. Like, and you're interested on what it is to follow Jesus and to know Jesus. And I would want you to leave today with some confidence that there are so many people around you, call themselves Christians. We follow Christ because we see ourselves as a Matthew type, a Matthew and his friends type, where we were invited to follow Jesus and we said yeah, and it's changed our lives. And it's not because we belong at the same table with Jesus. We don't feel that way. In fact, the more we follow Jesus, the more we wonder why he picked us. And we have to laugh or really cry about our lack of follow-through sometimes. It's never been about the good things that we can do. It's always been about the good things Jesus has already done to invite us into God's family. And I would want you to know today, and maybe I'm the first person to tell you this, you're loved by God more than you will ever know. And there's a verse I want to share. It's at the back of the book. It's Revelations 3:20, and this is Jesus talking. He says, look, I stand at the door and knock. Consider this the door of your heart, the access to your life. All the presentable places, all the dark corners. Jesus says to people like you and me, I stand at the door and knock, and if you hear my voice, and if you'll open the door, look at this, I will come in and we will share a meal together as friends. There's that precious meal language again. But it's Jesus and it's you. He's the one calling. And he's saying, hey, if there's any room for saving, I want to be your guy. He is the Lord of Lords. He is the King of Kings. He's worthy. But just like in Matthew's day right now, he doesn't lead with that. He never leads with entitlement and title. He just wants to relate. This is the Jesus who came to earth to take care of the problem that would never allow you and God to be in the same place. It's our sin. And that's why he died on the cross, to pay the penalty for sin that we could never pay. Raising himself from the dead 3 days later, proof that every promise he ever made will always be true. And he wants those promises to be good for you too. And so look, I'm going to show you on the card that Kelsey talked about earlier, there's a place that says, hey, I'm making a first-time commitment to follow Jesus, or maybe this is a decision you had made in the past, but it's been years. You need to get back to it. You need to sort of rededicate yourself to this being the relationship that saves you every day. This is the box you checked. Let us know if you want to make a decision. I want to walk you through that decision right now. It's a precious decision that I had to make at one point in my life, and I'm so glad I did. Most important, best decision I've ever made. Will you bow your head and close your eyes with me? This is how it would go. From the truth of your heart to God's ears, he's always listening. You would just say, hey, all right, I admit it. I'm a sinner. That disqualifies me from the presence of a good, righteous, holy God. But if you sent Jesus to rescue me, there is room for rescue here. I haven't always known what the issue is, but I've always known something's off. And today I just want to start by trusting you, Jesus. I don't feel the pressure to know all the things. I just know today that you are offering eternal life through forgiveness for all my sin. And I want what you have, Jesus. I want your life in my life. I want to start fresh. I receive that today. I pray these things in your name. Amen. If you made that decision today, we want to know about it. All your Connect cards are going to go in the giving stations. You check that box, let us know, because we want to start a conversation with you and see how we can bless you, how we can serve you. Church, Heritage, I love you. And I'm excited to hear your stories. And I forgot to mention, even if you decide not to have the church reimburse you, go to that page, tell us the story. We want to know what God is doing through you. Can't wait. We're going to hang out in the lobbies. We're gonna blow air kisses to some babies, and we're gonna take some pictures together, and we're gonna hang out and have some coffee. It's gonna be great. We'll see you in the lobby. Heritage, you're dismissed.